Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Do you remember collecting small race cars? Well, do you remember where that passion started? Right, it was because of the Speed Racer cartoon. There could be no doubt that Speed Racer is one of the most recognizable and iconic cartoons to ever come out of the pop culture scene of the 1960s. The memories of the legendary Mach 5, the adrenaline-filled Go Speed Racer Go theme song, and the mysterious Racer X are still enough to evoke a tremendous amount of nostalgia. But even with this massive cultural imprint, very few people can recall the actual ending of the original show. That collective amnesia stems in large part from the fact that for a whopping 25 years, no new Speed Racer series was produced for American screens after the checkered flag was waved at the end of its original run. The actual behind-the-scenes turbulence of this franchise, however, is even more intense than any of the on-screen races. Almost all subsequent attempts to kickstart this beloved franchise were executed entirely without permission from the original Japanese studio. The confused squabble over who really owned the copyright to Speed Racer turned into a massive legal battle. This is the full tale of how the original cartoon came to its end, and why it took 25 stormy years for anyone to legally step on the gas again.
To Danger Pass. Just as he got to the top, another car cut in front of him.
A racing manga turned into a sponsor-free gamble. If we are to create a true understanding of the legacy of Speed Racer, we must go back to its roots in Japan, where it was known as Mach Go Go Go. Tatsuo Yoshida was the creator of the manga, which appeared in Shonen Book from June 1966 to May 1968. Yoshida drew heavy inspiration from his previous manga series, Pilot Ace, while cleverly combining the glitz and glamour of high-stakes racing with the gadget-ridden spy thriller aesthetics of Goldfinger. The pair seemed like a sure bet for a blockbuster on paper, but it proved to be much more tenuous at the time of its TV debut. The animated version was introduced to television with an unusual obstacle. The first 2 episodes were broadcast by the Japanese network Fuji TV without any commercial sponsors. For commercialized television in the 1960s, an unsponsored, action-packed animated series was a huge gamble. Network executives waited anxiously to see whether the sheer force of the Mach 5 would attract viewers. The risk paid off. After those initial episodes aired, the program quickly gained traction, establishing its place as one of the most successful animated shows of its era. Racing to America almost in real time. While Japanese viewers were still becoming familiar with Yoshida's universe, an ambitious localization project was already underway across the Pacific. What makes the story of Speed Racer so special is how quickly it was adapted for its American debut. A syndicator named Translux secured the English language rights and released the show in the US in the autumn of 1967. Peter Fernandez, an extraordinarily industrious figure, was responsible for bringing this Japanese racing saga to Western shores. Fernandez served as the producer, head writer, and director of the English adaptation team. To accommodate the fast mouth movements of the Japanese animation, Fernandez completely rewrote the dialogue at lightning speed, famously changing character names to better appeal to American audiences. On top of writing and directing, Fernandez stepped into the recording booth to provide the iconic voices for both Speed Racer and his enigmatic older brother, Racer X. His fast-paced vocal delivery became a hallmark of the series, born out of the necessity to match the rapid speed of the original Japanese audio. "52 episodes, 1 season, done." In today's media climate, a popular animated series is frequently extended over several years until it eventually runs out of steam. The original Speed Racer, however, was produced in a disciplined fashion. The entire run was designed as a self-contained 52-episode order from the start, with no cliffhangers demanding endless network renewals. The Japanese broadcast run started on April 2, 1967, and concluded 12 months later on March 31, 1968, on Fuji TV. The series was exported to America, where all 52 episodes were carefully dubbed and broadcast for syndicated television. This limited episode count is essential to the show's legacy. It was never an open-ended multi-season commitment. It had a clear beginning, a fast-paced middle, and a definitive finish line. The actual final storyline. So how did this 52-episode saga actually finish? The ultimate climax of Speed Racer culminates in the final two-part finale, Race Around the World. Speed enters a perilous globe-spanning Grand Prix featuring the most dangerous terrain and fierce international competitors, including the mysterious Racer X. Throughout the grueling race, Speed pushes the Mach 5 to its absolute limits, proving his growth as a driver and ultimately crossing the finish line to become the world champion. Following his victory, Racer X steps away from the crowd, removes his mask, and reveals to the audience that he is indeed Rex Racer, Speed's long-lost older brother. Choosing not to disrupt Speed's moment of glory, Rex resolves to keep his identity secret until Speed is fully mature, continuing to watch over his younger brother from afar as Speed celebrates his ultimate triumph. The show that lived by the sword. Following its initial release, Speed Racer became a massive phenomenon in America, reaching an estimated audience of 40 million viewers in the late 1960s and early 1970s. However, despite its large fan base, the show faced heavy pushback from television advocacy groups during the mid-1970s. The pushback was driven by shifting cultural attitudes toward children's programming. By 1974, the exact elements that made Speed Racer exciting in 1965, the fistfights, fiery crashes, intense competition, and constant peril, drew sharp criticism from parental watchdogs. This sentiment was echoed in a July 12, 1974 commentary in the Chicago Tribune, which criticized the show's high-octane violence and declared that the era of such aggressive children's programming was over. "25 years of nothing." Following the mid-1970s parent-led pushback, the franchise entered a long era of production inactivity in the West. While the Mach 5, Racer X, and the iconic theme song remained deeply entrenched in pop culture through continuous syndication reruns and merchandise, no new animated Speed Racer adventures were produced for American television for 25 years. Children growing up in the 1980s saw Speed Racer on t-shirts and in nostalgia retrospectives, but never received a contemporary series of their own. While the rest of the animation industry evolved rapidly around it, the official franchise effectively sat idle in the garage for a quarter of a century. The reboot nobody approved. The 25-year production drought ended not with a grand return orchestrated by the original creators, but with a controversial American reboot. In 1993, The New Adventures of Speed Racer was released by Fred Wolf Productions, produced without the direct involvement or authorization of the original Japanese studio Tatsunoko. This unauthorized reboot strayed significantly from the core formula, introducing time travel and heavy sci-fi elements to a series originally rooted in automotive racing. More importantly, it sidelined the emotional family dynamic that had grounded the 1967 original, specifically the relationship between Speed and Racer X. Met with low ratings and critical backlash, The New Adventures of Speed Racer was canceled after just 13 episodes. Trying again, and again, and again. The 1993 reboot was only the beginning of a chaotic era of revivals. In 2002, Speed Racer X, an English adaptation of Tatsunoko's 1997 Japanese remake, aired on Nickelodeon. However, due to a severe legal dispute between adaptation distributor DiC and licensing entity Speed Racer Enterprises (SRE), the broadcast was cut short, with only 13 of the 34 produced episodes ever airing in North America. A third attempt arrived in 2006 with Speed Racer Lives, a brief webtoon series created primarily to promote a new toy line. Shortly after, in 2008, Speed Racer: The Next Generation was launched to coincide with the Wachowskis' live-action feature film. This series shifted focus to Speed's son, but once again operated under complex licensing agreements that led to further legal complications with the Japanese IP holders. Who actually owns Speed Racer? The persistent reboots and sudden cancellations stemmed from a major legal battle over the fundamental ownership of the franchise. American licensing company Speed Racer Enterprises (SRE) had managed the U.S. rights for 2 decades, licensing the property for reboots, merchandise, and cross-promotions. However, Tatsunoko Production maintained that SRE had exceeded its contractual limits and was licensing the brand without proper authorization. The dispute culminated in a major court ruling in December 2013, where the court decided in favor of Tatsunoko. The ruling granted the Japanese studio full retroactive rights to the Speed Racer franchise, effective from May 2011. The decision legally established that years of unauthorized licensing agreements had been conducted without Tatsunoko's approval, officially restoring full control to the original creators. Where the franchise stands today. With the legal disputes resolved and Tatsunoko firmly back in control, the property has established a much more stable foundation. In 2015, Funimation acquired the official distribution rights, culminating in a pristine 2017 home video release of the original 1967 series. In 2024, Shout Studios secured the US distribution rights, assuring the classic episodes remain officially accessible across modern streaming platforms. The franchise is also expanding with new projects. In 2024, Mad Cave Studios launched a brand new Speed Racer comic book series written by David Pepose, which earned critical acclaim from readers. Furthermore, J.J. Abrams' production company, Bad Robot, has a live-action Speed Racer series in active development for Apple TV+, bringing the classic property back to mainstream audiences once again. Did any of the modern revivals ever capture the magic of the original 1960 show for you? Let us know your favorite or least favorite memories in the comments below.